November 152 Sierra Foxtrot, cleared direct needles, VOR. Cross needles at 7,000, cleared VOR Alpha approach.
Clear direct needles, VOR, cross needles at 7,000, and cleared VOR Alpha approach, November 152 Sierra Foxtrot. Hey guys, welcome to another simulator session. Today we are going to shoot the VOR Alpha approach into the Needles Airport. That's Kilo Echo Echo Delta. We just got the clearance from ATC to head direct to the Needles VOR, and we're going to cross it at 7,000 and then commence the approach. So as you can see in our CDI, we've got it dialed in to arbitrary heading of 120, and that was really just, we dialed the OBS around until the needle came into the center that showed we were to the station, and then we adjusted our heading so that we could match the OBS on our CDI to fly that needle in. So now we're heading direct to the Needles VOR, and we're going to commence the approach as soon as we cross it. Now it's going to happen kind of quickly here. We're pretty close to the VOR, probably just about 3 or 4 miles northwest of it. And as you can see, the CDI's needle is already deflecting out to the right. So this is an indication that we're getting close to the VOR. We don't want to chase that needle. We had it centered moments ago, and as it runs away from us like that, we know that we're getting ready to cross the station. And so what we're going to look for is that to flag to flip to a from flag here in just a few moments. And as soon as it does, we will begin the approach, which is going to involve a left turn on a heading of 077, heading outbound from the Needles VORTAC. So that should happen here just in a couple of seconds. And when it does, we're going to make that turn. There we go. There's the from flag. And we're going to maintain 7,000. Twist that to a 077 using the OBS, and the CDI will reflect a 077. That's going to be our outbound radial from Needles VORTAC. We brought up the approach plate here so we can see what we're going to do. We're basically going to fly outbound here for a minute. So there's the top of the clock, and we are going to fly this heading for 1 minute just to give us a little bit of space. Now the only thing that we have to make sure of is that we stay within 10 nautical miles of the Needles VORTAC while we're conducting this procedure turn. So how are we going to do that without any DME or any distance measuring equipment on board? Well, let's take a look at our airspeed. So worst case scenario is we're flying 120 knots for the entire approach. 120 knots is going to be 2 nautical miles per minute. So even if we flew outbound for a total of 5 minutes, we would still be right at that threshold of 10 nautical miles from the field. Now we're only going to fly outbound for 1 minute on this heading, and then we're going to do our procedure turn for another minute. So at most we're going to be 5 or 6 miles from the Needles VORTAC. As the clock comes back around to the top, we're going to make that left turn to 032, and this is just going to allow us to give us some space so that we can come back around and intercept the inbound course and be on track inbound to the Needles VORTAC. So what we're doing now, as you may see, we're losing some altitude, and you can go ahead and come all the way down to 5,100 feet. As you can see on the chart, when we are established on the 077 radial, 5,100 is our at or above altitude. And so that's what we're doing while we make the turn. Coming to the top of the clock, we'll make the right turn, coming back around to intercept the 257 radial inbound. And we're going to turn that OBS right now so the CDI reflects that 257 radial. And there's the top of the clock. So you can go ahead and begin your right turn to intercept. Now, ultimately, we're going to be heading 257 back to the VORTAC, but we don't want to fly, we don't want to turn to that immediately. So we want to intercept at about 30 degrees. So we'll head to maybe about a 210 to a 220 heading, and allow that needle to come off the side of the cage. And what we'll do is we'll look for cage break, and what that means is you can see now that the needle is fully deflected to the left on the CDI, which, by the way, is the top right instrument there on your main panel is what we're looking at. That comes off of the cage, as we say, it'll be live and we can start to intercept it inbound.
152 Sierra Foxtrot, you are dropping below my radar. Cancel IFR in the air on this frequency or on the ground with flight service. Frequency change approved. Good day.
Okay, roger that and copy, y'all. We will plan to cancel on the ground and frequency change approved. November 152 Sierra Foxtrot. See ya. All right, excellent. So we just got the call from ATC. They're dropping us off of their radar and putting us over to the Common Traffic Advisory frequency. We'll go ahead and switch to that now. As you can see, your needle is coming in. We're going to make that turn and start intercepting that 257 radial inbound to the station. Notice the flag has flipped back to a 2. Everything looking good on our instrumentation. And once we get established here on this inbound course, we can make a call to needles to let them know that we're inbound for landing. It's an IFR day. There should be no VFR traffic around, and we're cleared for the approach, so we do have that protection, but it's always a good idea to send a radio call out when you're entering a non-towered airport environment. So let's go ahead and do that now. Needles traffic, November 152 Sierra Foxtrot on about a 10-mile final inbound runway, 29 Needles. Good, so what we're doing now is you can come down to 3,700 feet. We are inbound, established on that inbound course of the 257 radial, and you can see that we're going to cross the Needles VORTAC inbound at 3,700 feet or above. So whatever works for you. You don't have to come right down to 3,700 feet, but closer the better. So you want to leave yourself a little bit of wiggle room for any altitude deviations that you might have just by cross-checking your instruments, looking at your radio panels, any distractions that you might get. Single pilot IFR is about as busy as it gets. So give yourself a little bit of a buffer there so that you don't bust that altitude and A, lose those protections, and B, jeopardize the success of your check ride if you're doing an approach like this on an exam or a check ride. As we come inbound, all we're really looking for now is the flag to switch to a from. That'll indicate that we have crossed the VORTAC and we can come down to our MDA of 1560 after that. So right now, shoot for 4,000, everything's looking good. Always cross-checking your instruments, making sure that your heading, altitude, airspeed, and attitude are all where you would expect them to be and where you intend for them to be, and making any of those corrections if not. Alright, so as we get closer to the VOR here, you can see it's starting to run away from us again. Remember, don't chase that needle. You're on track, everything was centered, you're looking good. This is what's going to occur when you're over the station there. And as it hits the far side of the cage, looking for that flag to flip. So there's the swap, and there's the flag. So now we are just crossing the Needles VORTAC, 7 miles out from the missed approach point, and we can go ahead and come on down to 1,560 feet. Now give yourself a little bit of wiggle room here. Maybe not come down all the way to 1,560. Maybe call it 1,600 feet. Because we do want to get down below this cloud layer so that we can start to see the airport environment and and the ground if possible, so that we know that we're on the right track and can continue a successful landing. Now, even if we do break through the clouds and start to get ground contact, remember, we still need that airport environment in sight in order to continue below the MDA. So there's some ground contact, so we are breaking through the clouds, but remember, under 91-175 in the FARs, operation below the MDA requires us to be in a constant position to where we can make a landing to the intended runway. That flight visibility needs to be not less than what's prescribed on the instrument approach plate. By the way, the weather was 700 overcast, 3 static miles of visibility, so we do have the visibility. And most importantly, we need something that identifies the intended runway. Threshold markings, threshold lights, runway end identifier lights, VASI, if it has one, touchdown zone lights, the runway itself or the runway markings. So tally ho, there is the airport beacon. The VOR approach worked out just as expected. We're on track, headed towards the field. I'm not able to quite make out anything distinctive of the intended runway yet. So we're going to hold that altitude at 1600 until we get a little closer. That airport beacon is a fantastic nav aid to get us into the airport environment, and everything is looking really good right now. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward a little bit for sake of time, and once we get that airport environment in sight, we can descend below the MDA and come in for basically what's going to be a normal landing. Okay, welcome back. That was a quick little jaunt through time there. Let's make one more call to Needles traffic, November 152 Sierra Foxtrot, right base to final runway 29 Needles. And we have descended below our MDA, and just exactly as we announced them to the Common Traffic Advisory frequency, we're entering a base to final. We're configured for landing now. We've got flaps 3, the carb heat's on, our power is drawn back. We're shooting for about 60-65 knots on approach here. And the important thing from here is just stay stable. The clouds are kind of behind you at this point. Always keeping that missed approach in your back pocket. If something does go wrong with the landing, doesn't necessarily have to be related to IFR, remember, for a missed approach. Just a go around could happen at any time. You could get wind shear. Out here in Needles, you could have wildlife or tumbleweeds or debris on the runway, something like that. So we're always thinking about that missed approach, which is just going to be executed out by a climbing right turn to 6,000 and then back to the Needles VORTAC. But everything's looking good now. You've got your landing assured, so the throttle comes all the way back. Fight for that center line, get that nose up, and just let it settle right down onto the runway, shooting for those 1,000-footers. And nicely done. Fight for that center line, those feet alive, bring that rudder to the right, that runway center line right between your legs there. Excellent. All right. Fantastic job. That's the Needles VOR Alpha approach. And we'll just go ahead and stop it right here on the runway. Don't forget to close your IFR flight plan with flight service. Thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you guys. See you next time.